Three, two, one.
We'd like to welcome you to another edition of Grok Talk, brought to you by New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GraniteGrok.com. We are your feared extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, letter-writing, radio microphone stomping conservatives and rational libertarians. So get ready for more news and opinion you could only get from GraniteGrok.com.
Grok Talk.
All right, welcome back to the show. Bill O'Brien appears to be double booked, so we kept Greg here to fill in for us because we did want to talk about the technical side, and we want to, keep the conversation going. We'll get into that post-election or the pre-election technology stuff. We'll talk about the election some more, and keep this going.
Yeah. I had a little more on Mary Landrieu. There's a lot of fun, right? Aside from her trying to pull the racist KKK card on her own voters, which surely didn't go over well, there were a couple of well-publicized disasters. The night of the election, when it looked like things were going bad, Marcus Melitsas said Mary Landrieu should concede now and save everybody a lot of money. When you've lost the cause, you're in deep doo-doo. Next, the DSCC pulled advertising. When you're already millions of dollars in hock, borrowing another $10 million to support a potential loser doesn't seem like a great idea, especially when you've already lost the Senate. They throw too much money at too many marginal races, and they're screwed. And finally, in the closing days of the election, even maybe just after, Landrieu's folks put up a tweet which basically said, "Where was Bill Cassidy during Katrina?"
Yes.
And they even made signs for their people to wave. Turns out, he tweeted back, as quick as a flash, "I was putting together a surge hospital for the victims."
In an abandoned Kmart building.
Yeah. Nothing beats being slapped down by somebody who was actually working for the people.
Yeah, where was Landrieu? In D.C. in her house? I mean,
in her luxury house, or was she in her mummy's basement in Louisiana?
I think that you're going to the net is going to be about 9. I think you're going to see 54 Republican senators. Then, of course, there's the possibility that's been discussed that Senator Angus King from Maine, who is an independent, might now start attempting to caucus with the Republicans.
He turned it down. He had a presser and said no.
Well, that's the beginning of the negotiation skill.
I want to interject here just for a second because sometimes you just can't make this stuff up. World's largest solar plant in the United States applying for federal grant to pay off federal loan. After already receiving a controversial $1.6 billion construction loan from U.S. taxpayers.
Right? Turbocharged? It's sucking off its own exhaust?
Well, yeah, and it's eating up all the birds.
Right.
Not eating them up, but searing them as they fly over.
McNuggets, yes.
Yeah, the wealthy investors of a California solar power plant now want a $539 million federal grant to pay off their federal loan. This is an attempt by a very large cash-generating company that has billions on their balance sheets to get a federal bailout. The Avampa solar electric generating plant is owned by Google and renewable energy giant NRG.
Oh, we wrote about that a couple months ago.
Oh, yeah, we have. We did.
Yeah, the staff call them streamers. If the birds get into the concentrated part of the beam, their feathers catch fire and they fall to the ground charred.
Yeah, Icarus is all over.
That's green energy.
Yeah.
Well, I think it speaks to the unending reservoir of federal handouts that have been put in place for green pork, and it's just remarkable the fact that at some point no one is holding the decision makers accountable. I mean, has anyone gotten fired over Solyndra? Has anyone gotten fired over First Solar?
Has anybody gotten fired over anything? They really just kind of move the pieces around on the board.
It's remarkable about this in that it's okay to continue to fail constantly. And in the private sector, if you failed spectacularly like this, you'd probably be fired and never have a chance to work in that industry again.
I do not like that, Uncle Sam. I do not like green pork and ham.
That's what it is. I mean, it really is green pork, and it's a demonstration of the really misguided priorities of this administration, in that they are hell bent for leather to try to convince people to buy something that's above market costs and can't be sustained and can't get financing through traditional loans because no bank would loan the money. And so they just continue to have to do handout after bailout after handout, and it's just a colossal waste of taxpayer money. And at a time when we're starting to see petroleum and other natural gas prices come down across the country, to sit here and say let's continue to give such above market cost producers all these massive handouts, it's tragic.
All right, real quick because I want to go to the tech thing.
I forgot what I was going to say.
All right, let's go to the tech thing.
So one of the things that Americans for Prosperity has, and here in New Hampshire we've been working with it, but it's certainly something that's been expanded upon nationally. We actually had a number of folks working on a lot of the stuff, getting the bugs out, working on a lot of these issues down in Tampa earlier this year when there was a special election, testing a lot of the GOTV strategies to see how the systems can be utilized and we're still in the process of testing it. But the advantage that the left has in terms of data was really the story of 2008. I think a lot of folks said the left has
and 12.
a fantastic 12. Exactly 8 and 12, and some of the folks said, look, it's time for folks on the right to look at opportunities to expand. I mean, we're the people who embrace entrepreneurship, right? We're the people who are looking for new ideas and new innovations. So shouldn't the right be the people who are looking at these opportunities?
But we're also the party that everybody wants their own island.
Yeah, well,
yeah,
but
we were very busy working and tending to our families.
But one of the things we've done is we've worked hard to try to identify and figure out a lot of information about potential free market supporters, and some of them are people who are free market supporters who simply are not particularly enthusiastic about getting out to vote regularly. Some are people who don't know much about free markets, and thus therefore are people who we want to make sure hear the message about why a free market economy is beneficial to them. And some are people who simply are already on supportive of the message, but simply have become disaffected and either have not even registered to vote, and we need to convince them. Listen, taking part of your in the civics is part of the American experience, and it's absolutely vital to policy that ultimately impacts you. And so we've been working hard across the country, doing stuff like voter identification, voter registration, and then get out the vote for folks who are committed to a free market message. And that involves a lot of folks going out. And we don't go out with a paper walkbook. We go out with an iPad, and that updates in real time. It updates in real time. It allows you to do some fantastic breakdowns of data, so you can see trends, which way the trends are going, if the trends are moving, and you can really get a chance to drill down and become do a lot better decision making when you have better data. Because when your data drives your decision making, it allows you to tremendously expand the decision, not just the messaging decisions, but also on where to allocate resources.
Now, it's my understanding that a lot of this is, let me switch views here. A lot of this is being fed into a few large, basically, data mines. And it can be switched and examined a lot of different ways. But it's my understanding that the Republicans have made it such that different organizations can pump in their different data as they're going along, and it's updated, can almost be updated daily for later analysis. So my question is, you're talking about, on the iPads, are you using GOP technology, or is this AFP that's feeding into this third party that the national GOP has hired to run the data? So you've got all these other groups. Are you just one of those groups feeding what's important to you, and then that gets added to the mix?
Well, actually, first of all, it's important to point out that we are a nonprofit, and we do not work with political committees like the GOP. So
Right.
And our network has a data partner, and we work with our data partner. So
Right.
we have a data partner who's actively involved, but that data partner is not one that's affiliated with the RNC or anything like that. They have their own data partner that they're pursuing, and I think that fundamentally it all depends on what's important to you, what data are important to you, and from our perspective, we're focused on free market issues. So where someone stands on abortion probably isn't something that's particularly relevant to us. Where someone stands on gay marriage. There are other groups for whom that those data are tremendously important for their issues and the issues that they focus on. So we have a smaller subset of issues that we're focused on than the Republican Party or the conservative movement generally, and we focus on working with our data vendor to try to build that analysis.
So all of this technology is AFP or AFP associated entities that have created what you guys use out in the field.
Correct.
Okay. And the reason why I put that is just like with Catalyst, which was the big name for the Democrat machine. But
it's important to point out that the left has multiple.
They do
information.
And the New Hampshire Democrats have their own little data mining process going along,
Right.
and there are. At the very low level, there's folks like AFP, and then there's Granite State Progress, and all of the other stuff, all in the political realm, and they report into their data stuff. But there's also, at the very top, there are interconnections that are being made. And I know that from reading some of the examples of what the GOP is sort of alluding to, sort of like what the Democrats alluded to in some of their reporting on tech, that actually put the fear of God in me when I went, they're only telling us 5 to 10%. Oh my gosh, we are so screwed, and we were in 2012 in the presidential. But the idea is that those databases have become much more flexible because it used to be a big deal to regen the schema, as it's called. When you add in more data points, it used to be a huge deal to then renormalize everything and get that data normalized so that everybody could use it again. And now it's become almost okay, we got to do it again tonight. No big deal.
Right.
But all that stuff's been feeding in, so now you're getting just scads of views that are now possible by the associated. Wrong button. By the associated type folks that can do this kind of stuff. So that's why I was asking.
No, I will tell you that I really don't. I'm not familiar with the Republicans database,
Should we call?
So I can't speak to it. I do know that we do refresh this data regularly, in fact, almost on a daily basis, to make sure that the data that's coming in is being analyzed in real time. Because that's absolutely essential. If you're not dealing with information in real time, you really can't get the best use out of it. And I know you have another guest calling in. So
we do.
My old boss, so I'll defer to him, certainly.
Well, it would be a second till he... Line 2? Line 2, okay. What do you guys... I already did that, yeah. What are you guys finding? I mean, what's the pulse, I guess?
First of all, I think it's important to understand that it's about trying to identify and motivate folks, and I think that ultimately we think that we can do that with enough people on the ground.
All right. Well, stay tuned. Hang on. Bill O'Brien, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Sorry about the technical snafus here.
We're damn glad to have you, sir.
I know you've got to find the right buttons here. Hold on. Sorry. Yeah. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, we're damn glad to have you on, and I know you had a really busy morning with a couple of party meetings and stuff.
Yeah, no, it has been a busy morning, but I appreciate you having me on. I really do, guys.
All right. Well, we're having a post-election discussion, and we'd like your thoughts.
Well, I'm certainly pleased that we are back in the majority entirely in the New Hampshire legislature. I think as we see in Congress, it puts a responsibility on us to both achieve part of what we talked to the voters about, but more importantly, perhaps demonstrating generally to the people of New Hampshire the benefits of Republican governance. We've had once again a session that has involved a lot of new taxes, a lot of attempts at overspending, the adoption of the biggest welfare program ever adopted in New Hampshire, this Obamacare Medicaid expansion. And so we have our work cut out for us, and we also need to demonstrate, as I was saying to the people in New Hampshire, that there is not only in theory a better way, but in practice a better way to run a government that is sustainable in the long run.
Are you excited that the Democrats ran their entire House agenda against you specifically and lost?
One way of looking at this, seeing that they did go into every state representative district except one, saying that they had a choice to vote for reps who wanted the Bill O'Brien Koch brother agenda. The only one they didn't go into is mine, and yeah, they said it was just the Koch brother agenda. We could say, well, I guess 60% of the voters in New Hampshire just want that. It puts us on the burden of finding out what that darn Koch brothers agenda is.
Well, we've got that right here in the studio because Greg Moore is with us.
Well, there you go. So we have perhaps one of the ambassadors there. So I should talk to this guy.
And he was giving us the spiel on basically they're seeking people who believe in free markets. What's wrong with that?
I guess that mail was accurate. It would have been more accurate, more informative if they had said the Bill O'Brien free market agenda. But perhaps that wouldn't have the negative campaigning effect that they were looking for. Hey, look, we laugh about this, but I think one of the things that's happened is that this negative campaigning is beginning to wash over the voters, and in part it irritates them, and in part it's understood by them to just be meaningless. So they look at, certainly on the national level, and I think they look in New Hampshire as well, at who will be more effective in bringing back a vibrant economy in New Hampshire and allowing businesses to grow and stopping putting impediments in their way. And I think that they've chosen wisely the Republican Party to do that.
Bill, I think it is a real critical time because here in New Hampshire, because a lot of us are saying, screw D.C., save New Hampshire. And I think that a lot of us are tired of seeing the federal intrusion. I mean, the greatest version of that was a couple cycles ago when the Executive Council voted not to fund Planned Parenthood of New England, and then Jeanne Shaheen swooped in with federal dollars to override a rightful decision by elected New Hampshire officials, and that's really the point I'm trying to get to say you did wrong and we have to fix you. And I'm curious, do you see the same thing acting at your level, at the House level, and perhaps maybe at the state Senate level, with all the money that the federal government can push, and now with the intimidation factor? Can New Hampshire fight against that? What do you see coming out of this election? Will that continue? Will it get worse because of a petulant Obama and his administration? And what do we do to protect ourselves?
Well, I think we have to fight against that. I think we have no choice but to fight against that. And I think there's a developing understanding that all these federal dollars that are dangled in front of us not only come with onerous attachments, but in the end produce unsustainably large state government. Now, that's one of the reasons, in addition to others, that when I was Speaker before, we were so adamant in opposing Obamacare Medicaid expansion, is because in the end, the federal dollars that were dangled in front of us will be withdrawn. But there's a bigger issue there, too, and that issue is an invasion of the sovereignty of states. The founders had in mind a balance of power that just didn't exist within a specific government, whether it's the federal level or state government. We are often taught as students, as young kids, that there was this balance between the judiciary and the executive and legislative. But they also had in mind an equally important balance between a federal government of enumerated, limited powers, and state sovereign governments that exercised their functions in an independent way. And since really the last 50 to 75 years or more, there's been this use of the federal taxing authority and all the money it brings in to break down that line, and it's very dangerous. I don't want to get too hyperbolic, but the fact is that central governments over time, if there's no check on their power, tend to become somewhat oppressive. And if we abandon that limitation that the founders wanted by being addicted to federal dollars every time they show up at our doorstep, then we're going to find in the end, and we're finding now, I would suggest to you, a central government that's much more activist and oppressive than what we want. Let me just give one example. There's the scandal with the IRS where Gene Shaheen and others have decided that we'll take the taxing agency of the federal government and use it to oppress political activity.
That would be people like us.
That would be people like us.
Indeed so. And I'd submit this has been a problem for 100 years since the 17th Amendment and the creation of the Fed and the IRS. The federal government figured out a way to coerce the states with the people's money and thereby oppress the people through the agency of the states.
Yeah, I mean, that laid the groundwork for it. That was, as a result of the progressive movement. Where I think it really began to take life, Mike, was during the New Deal when the Supreme Court was finding unconstitutional agency after agency, bill after bill that the Roosevelt administration was passing that really went beyond its enumerated powers. And there's a famous example. I think it might have been Felix Frankfurt, if I'm not mistaken, went to the Roosevelt administration and said, "You guys," and when he was a professor at Harvard, and said, "You guys ought to understand how you do this. All you have to do is offer the states money to do what you want them to do, and you'll find that they do it. And there will be no constitutional problems with doing that." That was really kind of a seminal decision to do that. We've seen it take place since then, in the last 75 years, and the result of what we have now.
Right. I mean, the constitutional, or rather unconstitutional approach was Wickard versus Filburn, where they created law out of whole cloth long before emanations from penumbras.
Right. And so, what we have now is a federal government that's out of control, a federal government that would go so far as to instruct individuals to engage in commerce, such as occurring with Obamacare. And, at whatever level of government we're at, whether it's at a local level, if we're on a school board, or we're on a board of aldermen, or if it's at the state level, we have to push back on that. And we have to talk to people about why these federal dollars are not free at all.
So, Bill, what do you think are going to be priorities in the House other than Medicaid expansion?
Well, I think we have to look at our election laws. Now, we understand that on the other side of the aisle, there's going to be people who do like election laws, it seems, that are looser than many of the people of New Hampshire would expect. They push back on voter ID. I think we have to strengthen our voter ID laws. I think we have to, as much as we can, look at a definition of domiciliary or residency that meets people's expectation that in New Hampshire elections, only New Hampshire residents vote, something that a judge recently told us, about a year or two ago, told us that that's not required. We have to make it required. I think we have to look at the extent to which same-day registration makes sense and see how far we can go with the folks on the other side, and specifically Governor Hassan, and changing that. I suspect if you ask most voters, they'll say, well, that doesn't make sense. We ought to have people registered, so we figure out who the voters are before an election day arrives. But, we'll see how far it can go. That's an important set of issues that come under the heading of election law reform. We obviously have the budget we have to work on, and if I become Speaker, we're still going to be looking not only to live within our means and not try to increase taxes, increase the state's means at the expense of hardworking taxpayers, but we have to start to reduce taxes, particularly in the business area. We have the third highest business taxes, corporate taxes, in the country. And then we wonder why Rhode Island and Massachusetts are growing faster than New Hampshire. Something I didn't think I would ever say or hear anyone ever say. But that's happening. So we have to have the courage and ask Governor Hassan and the Democrats to join us in having that courage to look carefully at where we're spending money and reduce the spending where we can so we can reduce those taxes and invite businesses and get that businesses back here. So budget's a big issue, and those are some of the overarching themes that I think we're going to pursue. You know, the public employee pension plan remains a huge problem in New Hampshire. You know, whether it's the fund telling us that we're somewhere between $4 and $5 billion underfunded, which is, you know, more than the state's contribution to a 2-year budget, or it's the group like the State Budget Solutions that assumes a longer life expectancy and a smaller return on an investment, telling us that it could be as much as $13 to $14 billion underfunded. It's a huge problem. And it's certainly a problem that is one for the taxpayers, but it's also a problem for those who are going to be relying for their retirements on the fund being solvent. I hope if I become Speaker that we have reception from Governor Hassan to solutions. We would seek her solutions as long as she recognizes the problem, and we'll try to offer ours and start to solve that problem. Those are some of the huge issues that are going to come up. You know, obviously the Obamacare Medicaid expansion authorization bill is going to come up for renewal naturally by the end of 2000. It has to be done by 2016, maybe earlier if there isn't a waiver received from the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services. You know, that's unsustainable. That has to go away. Now we have to transition our way out of it, but it's got to go away. And it's going to be an issue that, again, we're going to be looking for ideas and cooperation from the other side, or they can just be recalcitrant, and we will work on however many members from the other side as well as Republicans to find solutions.
All right, Bill, we've come to the end of our segment. I wanted to thank you so much for taking some time to talk to us today.
Well, thank you for listening to me. It's going to be an exciting 2 years. I want to get up there if I can at some point and sit down with you guys and talk.
All right, we'll set something up.
We'll schedule you in.
Okay, very good. Thanks for calling me.
Thanks for... Bye-bye. All right, Speaker O'Brien. Could be Speaker O'Brien again. You never know.
True.
And that wouldn't be a bad thing.
No, it wouldn't.
No, we'd be okay with that.
Absolutely.
I'm waiting to see if my music starts. Oh, there it is. You know, I shortened it up, so we only have 30 seconds of music before we go to our 2-minute break. More talk.
Bye.
More talk.
Bye.
This is Grok Talk. Thank you, Greg, so much for sticking around and filling in and giving us all that great information. And hopefully we can have you back in a couple weeks or a couple months to talk about what's going on after we get a speaker. All right, this is Grok Talk. We will be right back with Michael Bolden.
New Hampshire is famous for scenic drives, but they're tough to enjoy when you're on your way to the doctor. Because Obamacare limits your choices, some will have to drive more than an hour to see a doctor. What's health insurance worth if care isn't there when you need it? Jean Shaheen voted for Obamacare, putting your doctors and hospitals further out of reach. Tell Senator Shaheen Obamacare is not working for New Hampshire.
Jean Shaheen and her allies are making false claims about her record on veterans. The truth? Shaheen refused to meet with veterans pushing for reform. She wasn't on the committee that wrote the reform legislation and refused to co-sponsor important VA reforms in the VA Management Accountability Act until after the VA scandal broke. When our veterans needed her, Jean Shaheen was AWOL. Tell Jean Shaheen to stop distorting the truth and fix the VA.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested, riveting radio show heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at gerardatlarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
This is the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is the repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now, at the top of our list is voter fraud. If you have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
Rock Talk.